Hi everybody, this is 314 Reactor here, and today we're going to be looking at Resident Evil 3 with ray tracing on because they just added it in recently. Dive into the graphics settings and we're going to turn on the ray tracing. And down in the corner here you can see a little preview of things and how much VRAM we're using. So let's just pump everything up. I hate these options where it goes click click and then it doesn't stop at the top option, it goes back to the bottom options. So because sometimes ultra quality isn't the maximum, there's sometimes something above ultra quality, you can never quite tell. Anyway, I'm going to be playing this on an RTX 3090 Core i7-6700K. Yes, I'm going to be upgrading that very soon, hopefully. Shouldn't be too much of an issue though, because this should be more GPU limited than CPU limited. Oh, it also looks like there's an option for 30fx super resolution, which seems to be on by default. Anti-aliasing, FXA, TAA. Wow, so they put ray tracing on it, but they didn't put DLSS on it, but they have put FSR1 on it. We'll try it without super resolution. We'll try it raw and see what happens. Turn everything up in max, which is 8 gigs. And that's filtering. That's fine. We'll just crank it all the way up. Max shadow quality. Max shadow cache on. Subsurface scattering on. Let's see how much VRAM subsurface scattering makes a difference on. None. Okay, interesting. Volumetric lighting high. Particle lighting high. Ambient occlusion on. Bloom on. Only a couple of options for ray tracing. Okay. Alright, so that should be everything as high as it can go. Let's dive into a game. Alrighty, so we're in game and we're getting 90 FPS there. So we're getting a pretty good frame rate. That FOV is absolutely horrible. So unlike Resident Evil 8, this does have a FOV slider and it's maxed out. I've maxed out the field of view and it still feels like it's a field of view of about 70. Why do they do this? Mini rant here. Why do they either not have an FOV slider like RE8 or have an FOV slider but it maxes out 70 FOV? Because this feels horrible, especially at 4K. My god, if you had an ultra wide, it'd be game over. So we're looking around, we can definitely see the ray tracing is activated, especially on the bed there. You can see the rays being a bit noisy, but it is running really nicely, which is good without FSR. In fact, 100 FPS there. Could be because this is an internal area. So getting about 70 FPS here. Oh god. You know what, as well? It feels like there's mouse acceleration. Anyway, right. Let's just soldier on through. This looks pretty good. I think they've probably gone a bit too far on the chromatic aberration and various other post-processing blurs and stuff, but we'll leave it all on just so we can push things to the max. We're also getting 99% GPU utilization and about 34 CPU. So yeah, it isn't, at least in this area, it's not too CPU bound. We're out of the dream now, so the color's a bit more natural. Look at the amount of blur and chromatic aberration there. I'm usually not the one to complain about chromatic aberration, but my god, that's some serious chromatic aberration. Holy. I mean, it looks really good, but it still kind of suffers from... I mean, when did this come out? A couple of years ago? It suffers from that Far Cry plasticky sort of look. And the really funny thing is that this game from 2020, I think, even with ray tracing, looks probably pretty much on par at the moment. Maybe not quite as good as Alien Isolation from 2014. It just shows how good the game engine was for Alien Isolation. Whoa, okay. That's not gonna stop him. Oh, and it's... Oh no. It's coming for me. Why does she think any of this is going to stop it? We are getting some hitches here. I don't know why that is. It's quite annoying. Alrighty. Hopefully those hitches stop. No. I don't know what's causing that hitching. It's quite annoying. The frame rate's otherwise good. There's nothing disk activity going on in the background. The RAM's okay. Could be some sort of shader compilation thing. Oh my god. See, this looks really good, but FXA and TAA, yeah. Where's the DLSS? That would really make this look really good. That would clean that image up and make it look flawless. So this is interesting though. So we're getting about 94 FPS. Sorry buddy, not yet. I don't think you really need FSR on. It's ultra quality. Let's go back. Oof, you can immediately see the whole image soften there. And we're up to like 114 FPS. So we've only gained about 20 FPS. And we're still getting the same GPU and CPU. So I don't think that's entirely necessary. I don't think it's hitting any CPU bottleneck. Because it was running like 90 without FSR. And FSR just makes it look blurry. And also the internal resolution will be lower. So that means the ray counts will be lower. So then you'll see suffered effects on the ray tracing. And you can see some shimmering in the ground there. And just the liquor store thing is blurrier. Everything's just blurrier. So I don't know why they haven't put FSR2 or DLSS in this. I don't. If you're going to put ray tracing in it, why would you do that? So anyway, let's turn FSR off because we don't need it. And it doesn't look as good with it. If you're running a lower end system, you may need it. But even then, I'd probably recommend just turning down a few other settings. So that's all that Fidelity FX stuff off. And now we're just running raw TAA SMA, which is just, again, there's still some shimmering in the ground there. There's still some aliasing sort of artifacts, especially on that little bar there to the right of the liquor store as the camera's moving. And just smaller details aren't anti-aliased properly. It just suffers from all those old school anti-aliasing techniques that are solved by DLSS. Put DLSS on, and I bet also it would go up from about 90 FPS here to like 140 or something like that. So now we're in outside area. Let's see how the frame rate goes. It looks like there's quite a bit of optimization with the ray tracing. I think those reflections are some sort of cube map. That's probably why the frame rate's quite high, because they're probably using quite a minimal implementation of ray tracing. And also the animation of those zombies there was running at a lower frame rate there as we came close to it. That seems very much like a console optimization. At least now we're in third person, the low FOV is not a problem anymore, really. Why do they think these things are going to stop the undead? 60, 50 FPS there. It only seems to freeze up when I'm moving to different areas and new things are happening. So I think there's some sort of shader compilation going on here, which is quite annoying. I'm just going to try and find out if this is using a hardware implementation or a software implementation of ray tracing. DirectX 12 is required. Minimum GPU was 760, R7 260, and it's changed to a 960, 460. So it's definitely global illumination, reflection, and light reflection, which makes sense. So I think it's a proper hardware solution. I think it's using RTX cores. I just think the ray count and various other optimizations, it's not doing too much GI stuff or reflections. And the hitching as well, I don't know if that's just me or something with the game. Again, I just don't know why they didn't put DLSS on this. It would make it look so much better, especially a hair, finer details and the chain links there. I don't think there's any reflections on these bottles down here or anything like that. That just looks like a basic cube mappy kind of thing, specular map kind of thing. Looks like there's some cool stuff with the GI going on in the fire around here. It's a nice bit of ambient occlusion and the little bits of the lights around the side there. I don't think I've actually seen any reflections yet. The one in the mirror earlier probably doesn't count because that was probably a planar or some sort of mimic on the other side through a transparent texture sort of thing. What about this? Yep, okay, there's a reflection. Not the highest of resolutions, not the highest of updates. It's not too bad, and given the material, it kind of makes sense. I'm not sure if the ray tracing is available for the consoles as well. I think it is. And it looks like they've heavily optimized it for that. Because again, it looks good, but not quite as good as you'd expect. Some nice lighting there in the interior. Lighting on the outside looks a bit fake though. I don't know if that's being ray traced.
It's my turn, bitch.
I mean, at this point, you should know that a car is not going to do anything. That's the Terminator Salvation shot. The frame rate's not really dipped below 60 much, only a couple of times. Oh, that looks cool. 2D fire effect there isn't so hot though. So we've got some ray trace reflections in the floor there. That's pretty nice. Some reflections in these windows. Yep. Okay, they're pretty good as well. Pretty nice. I do like reflections in surfaces like that because it just gives the world a bit more believability to see your character being reflected properly. And before ray tracing, it wasn't really possible to do that with all sorts of surfaces in a realistic way. And now you can. It's great, and when it's not there, you really miss it. I still just find it funny that if you take away the ray tracing, it still does look about as good as Alien Isolation did. And it looks like the chromatic aberration has turned down just a little bit, which is good. See, like reflections in metal like that as well. Kind of diffuse reflection there. I love that. I love that with ray tracing. And you know what? The more you play the game, now the chromatic aberration has been severely turned down. It's starting to look better the further we go. You can see the ray tracing on his face there and his ear. So it's not on the level of... Oh, I don't know what's going on the bottom right there. That looks like some sort of shader optimization going on. Or something going on with the camera focus. That was weird. I think that's something to do with the camera focus. There was like a loss of detail on his arm in the bottom right corner. Yeah, here it looks really good. This is where the DLSS would just take it up a level. I don't know why the lip syncing is a bit off there. But anyway, we'll skip that. So we're heading out to street level. Still a very nice frame rate. And it looks like there's not a reflection in these windows here. Again, it's probably part of the optimization. They probably have more ray tracing going on in the internal areas than the outside areas. Which makes sense, but I think you could leverage the power of PCs to get a bit more ray tracing going on here. And you've got details on the bricks here, like just completely flat texture, just not a lot going on there. So it's third person, so it's not a huge deal. I think the fire looks good, but then when you get up close, you do start to notice that it's more of a 2D kind of thing, which again makes me think console sort of optimization. Fairly certain those zombies are not being reflected. Oh, no they are. See his leg. You can still tell that quite a lot of what's going on here is being rasterized. So what I'm going to do is flick over immediately to pure rasterization and turn off all the ray tracing. And here we go. Here we are back in that exact same area with no ray tracing. You can definitely tell there's a loss of detail in terms of the lighting, shadowing. Certainly looks a lot more artificial, but at the same time it doesn't look drastically different, say on the level of Metro Exodus. But then not many games are going to be on that level of Metro Exodus or Quake 2 RTX, and it's running about 110 FPS, so you're losing about 20 to 30 FPS by activating ray tracing. Look at that SSR. So I imagine ray tracing to fix that up. In fact, let's flick the ray tracing back on and check those same reflections. So the reflections still look a little bit blurry, a little bit low res, but they look a lot better because they are not disappearing off the screen. you can still see they're very streaky. So it looks like the update rate on the rays isn't entirely the best. I think given by the fact there's only 2 options for the ray tracing, probably indicates that, yeah, it's not the most robust or intense ray tracing implementation. It's not like Control or something where you can change each individual aspect of the ray tracing. Well, I imagine if you've got a base level RTX card like a 2060 or a 3050 Ti, I think those exist, you'll probably do pretty well for anything up to 1440p. Anything above that you can use FSR to help out or turn down some other settings. And I think overall, yeah, it does vastly help to clean up the image and make things look a lot better. Reflections, shadows, lighting all look a little bit more natural. But again, not quite to the level of some other games. There's definitely some really blurry stuff going on down there. And also some weird kind of overglow, which reminds me of something you'd get from RTGI ray tracing using reshade. Like, it just looks a bit too glowy down there. It looks a bit too bloomy. It's a free update for 2 and 3. You get your ray tracing, makes things look a lot better. So, can't complain too much. You can definitely see the frame rate drop in those animations as well in the distance. Look at that. I think my computer could handle that animation going at full rate. So it's got very much that console-y sort of taste to it, which is not a bad thing. It's always a little bit better when they sort of leverage the latest hardware on a PC, because they could have made this look extremely good, like movie-looking good. That's my overview on it. Runs pretty well, looks pretty good, and it's a free update. So that's great. If you want to check out more detailed, in-depth analysis, I think Digital Foundry have a video up on it. I'll link that in the description. Go check them out. They know what they're talking about way more than I do. If you like this video and you're still here, give it a like, give it a comment, subscribe, hit the little bell, and check out my latest video on my Terminator skull, made with a Raspberry Pi, and check out my TikTok, which is in the description. Thanks everybody for watching, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.